Alma the goat is the most important character you're ignoring. Her black spots are spreading every season, and it's not biological. She is a biological sink, absorbing the corruption so the humans don't have to. But what happens when the white runs out? In Fromville, no one ever questions the soil. Conversations swirl around monsters, the night, the trees, and the whispers in the wind. But the ground itself remains untouched in discussion. Yet, it's the ground where everything ultimately finds its resting place. And in this town, endings unfold in peculiar ways. The initial signs are subtle, almost easy to overlook. Deep within the tunnels, long before anyone grasps the nature of what lurks below, rats are feasting on a lifeless bird. They're not nibbling cautiously like wild creatures. Instead, they seem to have settled into their task, as if decay itself is running on a schedule. On the surface, a worm, severed in two, continues to squirm in Sarah's hand, stubbornly resisting the finality that death typically brings. Soon after, cicadas emerge in staggering numbers, not from the treetops, but from a corpse, the remains of a creature that should have been devoid of anything to offer. Alone, each event feels atmospheric. Together, they create a narrative. First comes the stripping away. In this place, flesh vanishes swiftly, especially where the earth is damp and lacking air. Rats arrive early, navigating tunnels and crawl spaces that remain a mystery to others. They don't just consume, they relocate. Bits of matter vanish into walls, soil, and the hidden void beneath the town. In bog-like settings, scavengers often start at the most vulnerable points. Mouths, eyes, wounds, where the line between inside and outside has already blurred. The image of a small body with its features disturbed isn't supernatural. It's a textbook case of decomposition in wet earth. Next is the transformation. Cicadas aren't typically surface-dwelling insects. Most of their lives are spent underground, sipping from roots and biding their time. When they finally emerge, it's in a synchronized wave, as if responding to a clock buried deep within the soil. In Fromville, their arrival is linked to a corpse, Smiley's body, as if whatever remained in that shell has become part of the earth. This isn't mystical rebirth, but rather conversion. Protein morphs into a swarm. Structure shifts into sound. A body becomes movement. Finally, there's the return. Worms serve as the quiet finishers of the death cycle. They don't dramatize decay, they complete it. They transform tissue into soil, soil into fertility, and fertility into the possibility of new life. The fact that a worm continues to wriggle even when severed emphasizes that, down below, continuity holds more importance than wholeness. The system doesn't demand integrity, it requires flow. When viewed as a whole, the pattern is starkly simple: removal, processing, reintegration. What makes it unsettling in Fromville isn't that this cycle occurs, it happens everywhere on Earth, but that it appears remarkably efficient, contained, and oddly selective. The town endures violence regularly. People die indoors, outdoors, in tunnels, and in the open. There's no formal sanitation, no modern infrastructure, no means for a typical settlement to avoid contamination. Yet, the place doesn't succumb to rot, disease, or the slow decay that follows unmanaged death. Graves don't fester. The air remains clear of illness. The environment is tense yet livable, as if something is quietly maintaining balance just below the brink of collapse. That something isn't a creature or a curse in a dramatic sense. It's an ecology. In bog-like soils, wet, low oxygen, rich in organic matter, decomposition doesn't cease, it reroutes. Some tissues linger, while others vanish swiftly, and small organisms take charge of the process. The tunnels beneath the town are precisely the kind of environment where such a system thrives. Dark, damp, insulated from temperature fluctuations, intertwined with roots. It's a place designed less for burial and more for digestion. Thus, the rats aren't omens. They're the initial phase of processing, breaking down and redistributing soft matter. The cicadas signify a second phase, transforming what remains into living biomass that can disperse. The worms finalize the cycle, returning everything to the substrate itself. There's nothing mystical about it, just the understanding that the ground is alive, not inert. What makes this pattern chilling is its implication for permanence. Cemeteries preserve memory through separation, bodies placed in marked spaces, isolated from daily life. In Fromville, there's no such division. The dead aren't stored apart from the living world, they're reintegrated into it. Every burial is less a conclusion and more a transfer of material from one visible form to an invisible one. In this way, the town doesn't erase the dead. It recycles them. The most unsettling aspect is how ordinary the agents of this process are. There are no glowing parasites or arcane rituals, just animals and insects fulfilling roles they've played for millions of years. The horror stems from the scale and efficiency, not from novelty. A system so effective that it leaves almost no trace of its workings, save for the absence of what once was. If the monsters symbolize sudden, violent death, the soil embodies the quieter certainty that follows. Teeth may end a life, but the ground resolves it. In Fromville, this resolution isn't rest, it's reintegration, a closed loop where matter never escapes the system that consumed it. Nothing in that place truly vanishes. The surface simply loses track of it while the earth takes care of the rest. Now we're moving on to almighty Alma. In Fromville, subtle changes often carry more weight than drastic ones. Each night, monsters make their appearance. That's just part of life here. However, when something familiar starts to shift gradually without any clear reason, it feels like a sign. Take Alma, for instance. This goat has been a staple of barn life since the beginning. Initially, she sported just a small dark spot on her head and a few scattered patches on her body. Nothing too noticeable or significant, just another two-colored livestock animal. Yet, when the black began to creep down her back every season, it felt unsettling. Not because it defied biology, but because it lacked any ordinary explanation. In a place where illnesses don't spread as expected and wounds hardly fester, such slow change feels deliberate. In human culture, goats are typically seen as companions, not adversaries. They bear crops, carry burdens, and even symbolize the hope that something worse won't happen to us. Historically, goats or sheep were often selected for their gentle nature. They don't resist when led, making them ideal intermediaries between humans and the unfathomable. Alma wasn't punished for wrongdoing, her existence was essential. Alma occupies a similar role in Fromville, albeit without the overt act of sacrifice. She hasn't been slaughtered yet or formally offered. She's been kept alive, nourished and shielded from the night's monsters. It's as if her very presence serves a particular purpose. The spreading discoloration on her body can be interpreted not as a disease, but as a burden, something that lingers and doesn't fade. The head is the first point of contact with the world. It sees, smells, and reacts. As the darkness descends to her body, it feels as if a burden once merely acknowledged is now actively carried. What's even more unsettling is that while Alma isn't the only animal around, she's the focal point for both the camera and the other characters. The rest of the animals fade into the background, while Alma stands out as an individual. In visual storytelling, this distinction isn't random. She isn't just an abstract symbol, she's a living creature experiencing ebb and flow. When humans pass away, monsters reappear or tensions escalate. Alma remains, quietly eating, observing, and transforming bit by bit. If Fromville is indeed a place where nothing truly vanishes, then the shifts in the bodies of animals that lack social or psychological roles are intriguing. Humans carry trauma, guilt, hope, and conflict. Animals, however, don't have the language to resist or process these feelings. They simply absorb their environment. In reality, animals often serve as the first signs that something is off. A cannery in a coal mine, or a village with sick livestock before the humans notice. In this context, Alma may serve a similar role, but not as a physical threat. Rather, she embodies an invisible pressure. The expanding black spot on her could signify that something is shifting within the town, not from one individual to another, but from the community to a quieter space. If humans are deemed too valuable to be carelessly harmed, then a creature deemed socially insignificant can serve as a safe placeholder. Alma lives on the margins, not making choices, instigating conflict, or altering the course of events. She's the perfect vessel for something to be placed for background, but deep down, do you realize Alma as character itself as conflict at least 4 times? With Randall Beef, slaughter, when monsters take Alma outside and now her skin. There's also a nuanced visual contrast at play. White in livestock typically symbolizes purity, nourishment, and domestication, elements under human control. In contrast, black often represents the unknown, the wild, or the dangerous. As black overtakes Alma's body, it doesn't suggest she's becoming a monster, rather, she's gradually stepping away from the realm of human. She remains tame, still grazing and residing in the barn, but visually, she's becoming less neutral. It's as if she's evolving from mere livestock into an object being utilized. Interestingly, none of the characters seem alarmed by these changes. There are no discussions about her health, no attempts to isolate her, and no rush to eliminate her before it's too late. In a community focused on survival, such reactions would be expected. The lack of response makes Alma's transformation feel like something that's been subconsciously accepted or perhaps not fully acknowledged. Much like the peculiarities of life in Fromville, it's strange but not strange enough to disrupt the everyday routine. While sheep or goats have historically served as stand-ins for human sacrifices, Alma appears to be a version that never reached the final stage of that ritual. She's not a replacement for the one who was sacrificed. Instead, she continues to live, bearing an increasingly heavy load. It's more than just a change. It's a profound transformation that invites deeper reflection.